When you get on a ferry or, a plane, even a train, how much do you actually think about the safety side? Or do you just kind of assume, like most of us probably do, that everything's well sorted, that the systems work?
You trust it. You have to, really.
Exactly. We take it for granted, especially now with all the modern tech. But what happens when that trust, that basic assumption, just gets completely broken? When greed, maybe, or just sheer incompetence overrides safety?
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about today, the story of the Sewol Ferry disaster. It's just a terrible, profound example of what happens when that trust is betrayed.
It really is.
So picture this, a totally routine ferry trip. It's scheduled to go from Incheon Port to Jeju Island, a popular vacation spot. On April 15th, 2014, around 9 p.m., the MV Sewol sets off. 476 people on board.
And so many of them were kids.
Yeah, heartbreaking. 325 high school students. They were heading off on a field trip, probably buzzing with excitement. But what started as just a normal overnight trip turned really quickly into this unimaginable tragedy. So we're going to unpack how it all happened, from those first moments to the really shocking reasons behind it and what came after.
Yeah.
So the next morning, April 16th, it starts out pretty normal on the Sewol. People waking up, maybe getting breakfast.
Students probably messing around, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Just another day on their trip. And then, bang, around 8:49 a.m., everything changes.
Yeah.
There's a survivor, Kim, who described it later, just this sudden, violent shudder through the whole ship.
Oh, wow.
And then the awful realization, the ship is tilting hard to one side. People immediately start making emergency calls,
right,
trying to get help. But the instruction they get back again and again is stay calm and stay put.
Which is just counterintuitive.
Totally. And the chilling thing, most of them did. They followed the order. Panic didn't erupt straight away. Some students were apparently even making jokes, maybe trying to cope. Others just couldn't believe it was serious, watching the minutes tick by.
And that order, stay put, in a ship that's clearly tilting severely, I mean, that goes against every single basic safety protocol for getting people off a sinking vessel. It's the exact opposite of what should happen.
Right.
It immediately suggests this paralysis. Someone somewhere wasn't making the call or couldn't. Bureaucracy kicking in at the worst possible moment.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Why weren't they told to evacuate? To get life jackets on, get to muster stations, anything?
What was going on?
Well, the short, awful answer seems to be bureaucracy and just staggering incompetence from officials on shore. While the passengers were told to wait, there was actually this frantic communication happening behind the scenes.
Between who?
Between the Sewol's crew and multiple government agencies, Jindo, Vessel Traffic Services, VTS, the Coast Guard, even the president's crisis team was involved. Loads of calls flying back and forth, but no clear direction. No one taking charge.
A communication breakdown.
A massive one. And get this, at 9:10 a.m., so a full 20 minutes after the ship started listing, the Sewol's captain radios VTS. He says, and this is a direct quote, "All of us are off our feet now. I don't know whether I should order everyone to jump in the water or not."
He doesn't know. 20 minutes in.
He doesn't know. That quote just sums up the whole problem, doesn't it? It says total avoidance of responsibility.
It absolutely does. That indecision. It's not just one person failing. It highlights a systemic issue, When leadership is unclear or people are afraid to make the tough call, a crisis just spirals. Every second wasted in that kind of situation is critical.
So while the passengers just waiting, confused, stuck,
yeah,
the crew gets different instructions. By 9:01 a.m., they are told to put on life jackets, get ready, and they actually gather on the bridge.
So the crew is preparing to save themselves.
Seems like it. Then, at 9:25 a.m., VTS tells the Sewol crew very clearly, the escape call needs to be made by the captain on his judgment, and it needs to be immediate.
Okay, so they were told explicitly.
Explicitly, but nothing. No order was given to the passengers. And then, the final betrayal. 9:47 a.m., Captain Lee John-sok is picked up by patrol boat 123, rescued.
He just left.
He abandoned his ship, abandoned every single passenger still on board, didn't tell him what to do, just saved himself.
Wow, the contrast there is just sickening. The crew looks after themselves, gathers for rescue, while hundreds of passengers, including all those students, are left with that stay put order. Ethically, legally, a captain leaving the ship like that, it's one of the worst things imaginable. A total dereliction of duty.
Meanwhile, as the captain is literally being plucked to safety, the president's office starts doing something really strange.
What's that?
They keep nagging the Coast Guard for a live video feed of the sinking ship, like they couldn't or wouldn't grasp the situation or take action without seeing it on a screen.
Seriously, they wanted video.
Repeatedly asking for it. And remember, Patrol Boat 123, the one that rescued the captain. It actually arrived on scene at 9:35 a.m. It was the first and basically the only Coast Guard boat there.
Okay.
When they radioed back to HQ that there were no passengers out on deck ready to be rescued, headquarters seemed genuinely surprised. Which is bizarre because, well, they had been told to stay inside.
That disconnect is incredible.
Then, around 9:54 a.m., a helicopter finally gets there and starts filming. But even that doesn't seem to change anything. By now, the Sewol is almost totally on its side. That survivor, Kim Sung-mook, he said he saw the helicopter, saw the Coast Guard boat nearby. But still, no evacuation order, no instructions, nothing.
Just watching it happen.
Pretty much. Over the next, 20 minutes or so, the ship keeps sinking, agonizingly slowly. And the president's office, still asking about the live feed.
Unbelievable.
There was a tiny bit of hope, though. Some passengers, the ones who ignored that initial stay-put order, they managed to get out.
They defied the command.
Yeah. And they were rescued by Patrol Boat 123 and also by some local fishing boats that bravely came out to help heroes, really. But it was just too late for most.
Or too late.
By 10:25 a.m., the Sewol was basically gone, almost completely underwater. And then guess what?
What?
Then the president's office, through the Coast Guard, finally issues a command that isn't about video. They say, make sure to have no casualties and make sure no one is missing.
After it's already sunk.
After it's sunk. Other officials were apparently discussing getting someone onto the ferry to order an evacuation or maybe landing a helicopter on it, all after it was submerged.
The timing, the irony is just brutal. That focus on getting footage instead of immediate action, it speaks volumes about a bureaucracy totally detached from the reality on the ground, or, well, on the water in this case. They were documenting a disaster instead of preventing the loss of life.
And the aftermath. It was just as chaotic and frankly insulting. The rescue efforts in the days after were, well, not great.
How so?
There was this civilian diver, Gong Jun, who showed up the next day wanting to help. He said the Coast Guard's diving gear looked ancient, decrepit, he called it. He told him it probably wouldn't even work properly.
Okay.
And apparently, a Coast Guard official told him they had to pump air into the ship anyway because the president was watching. Just for show.
For show. Pumping air.
Yeah. And get this. The diver apparently attached the air hose to the outside of the hull.
Right.
Improperly. So when they turned the air on, it just pushed the remaining bit of the ship that was above water down. The whole thing sank completely by April 19th because of this attempt to look busy.
That's horrific. The difference between real rescue work and just performing for cameras. And had direct, terrible consequences, making recovery even harder. It really highlights the courage of those civilian divers who stepped up when the official response was so flawed.
Absolutely. After that, it really wasn't a rescue anymore. It became a recovery operation. And it mostly fell to those civilian divers because, apparently, no government divers had the training for the depth, around 40 meters.
So civilians had to do the recovery.
Largely, yes. In the beginning, they were bringing up around 30 bodies a day. One time, they found 48 people together in one room. Can you imagine? The trauma for those divers, let alone the families waiting on shore.
Just unimaginable grief.
Unsurprisingly, the whole thing, the sinking, the terrible response, caused massive public anger in South Korea. Huge protests. It became a really big factor in the eventual impeachment of President Park Geun-hye. She was removed from office later on.
And it's important to remember, while the president became the focus, the symbol of the failure, the blame here is much wider. It's complex. It wasn't just one person. It was a whole chain of failures.
Which brings us back to the start, really. Why was the Sewol even in trouble in the first place? Ferries run all the time. What made this one so vulnerable?
Right. What were the underlying conditions?
Well, it seems several factors basically doomed the Sewol before it even left the dock. First, unsafe renovations. They'd recently modified the ship, added extra decks or structures on top.
To carry more passengers or cargo, presumably. Profit motive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it made the ship top-heavy, less stable. Apparently, dock workers had even noticed it swing really badly when cargo was being loaded.
A known risk, then.
Seems so. Second, it was massively overloaded the day it sank, carrying something like twice the legal cargo limit.
Twice the limit.
Yep. And not only too much cargo, but it wasn't secured properly. Crew members hadn't tied a lot of it down correctly. Some trucks, containers, just tied with ropes instead of chains, or maybe not tied at all.
So if the ship listed, that cargo would shift violently.
Precisely. And the final piece, ballast water. To hide how overloaded it was and get past these apparently very lax inspections, sometimes just a quick look at the waterline, the crew had drained most of the ballast water out.
which is crucial for stability. It's heavy water in tanks, low down in the ship, specifically to keep it upright.
He got rid of it.
So you put all that together, a sharp turn, maybe the one that initiated the list, combined with being top-heavy, overloaded, having unsecured cargo sliding across the decks, and missing its stabilizing ballast water. The ship just couldn't recover. It was a recipe for disaster. It shows how cutting corners on safety again and again isn't just risky, it can create an inevitable tragedy.
Yeah. So the blame, it really is spread out, isn't it? The company's negligence in modifying and overloading the ship, the captain and crew for their actions, or lack thereof, and then abandoning ship, and then the whole government and bureaucratic mess during the rescue itself.
Multiple points of failure.
In terms of accountability, the captain did get a life sentence for murder eventually, late 2014. Other crew members got prison time too.
Some legal consequences then.
Some, but many feel the real injustice is that the politicians, the officials, the bureaucrats whose failures led to that bungled rescue, they've never really faced serious consequences.
That's often the case, isn't it? The system protects itself.
And worryingly, reports suggest the Korean shipping industry hasn't entirely cleaned up its act. They still find ways around the rules. Fabricated weight certificates for cargo, trucks adding extra weight after the inspection. Seems the pressure to prioritize profit over safety might still be there.
It's a chilling lesson, the whole thing. We put our trust in these systems, in the people running them. But Sewol is a stark reminder of what happens when that trust is broken by negligence, by greed, and crucially, by the failure of leadership to act decisively when it matters most. It's like the bystander effect on a massive, tragic scale.
Yeah, the Sewol disaster. It's just such a painful story, a profound lesson in what happens when systems fail. We've covered the main facts, the terrible sequence of events, but it's crucial to remember the human cost. The grief, the loss, the ongoing fight for answers, and real accountability for the families, the survivors, those divers, that continues.
Absolutely.
So, maybe something to think about as you go about your day. What systems do you rely on? And how can we even tell when a system meant to keep us safe might be compromised? By hidden agendas or just indifference?
It's a heavy question.
It is.
Yeah.
Look, this was a huge event, obviously, and there's much more detail out there. If you do want to learn more, The New Yorker did some really in-depth reporting, and there's that documentary we mentioned, Crossroads, both worth checking out. Thank you for sticking with us through this really difficult story. We hope you'll join us again for our next deep dive.